ELESTRALS' new set Divine Champions Firestorm is finally here, and it introduces a ton of incredible new cards. So today I'm going to bring you the top 5 best decks after its release. If you haven't played ELESTRALS yet, or if you haven't heard of it, it's a brand new card game that is very similar to like old school Yu-Gi-Oh!, specifically like Edison format. There's a ton of amazing decks that are available. It's a really diverse format with some really good powerful back row cards as well. And in my opinion, these are going to be the best decks in the format post its brand new set release, being Divine Champions Firestorm. So if you're interested in hearing more about ELESTRALS, then make sure to leave a like on the video and check out the description as well for the ELESTRALS YouTube channel. But with that being said, here are the top 5 best ELESTRALS decks post Divine Champions Firestorm. Let's jump into it. So I've been playing card games for a very long time, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Is the game that I have the most amount of familiarity with. And that might be the case for you guys too. So what I want to do in this video is talk about all the top 5 best ELESTRALS decks, but I'm going to relate them back to their equivalent when it comes to Yu-Gi-Oh! Decks as well, because the playstyles for those strategies can be very similar to the ones we would see in Yu-Gi-Oh! 2. And of course, for each deck in my top 5, I'm going to give you a sample deck list as well so you can start your ELESTRALS journey. But before I go ahead and talk about my top 5 list, I have to introduce you to this card over here. This is Lycovoid, Champion of Artemis, and it is going to be one of the most defining cards in the ELESTRALS metagame. Basically, when this Lycovoid is summoned, or cast, it can summon out any number of its pre-ascension Werepup to the field. This allows you to set up a really wide end board that has to be answered immediately, and summoning it out can also be pretty easily thanks to the original Werepup's effect. Every single ELESTRALS deck has to have a strategy for dealing with this card, and every single one I'm going to show you today definitely does. But some of them are also able to play this card in their own strategy too. And with that out of the way, we can start talking about our number 5 best ELESTRALS deck, being Blistrix. Now, Blistrix is a phenomenal deck and was one of the better decks of the previous format. It's a deck that's focused very heavily on the Frost element and on milling cards as well. Milling is going to be when you're sending cards from your deck to your underworld or graveyard. This is a really powerful aspect of the game because they get a ton of powerful effects when sent to the graveyard this way, and it allows them to really get a ton of powerful advantage and allow you to really recur resources quite effectively. Basically, when a lot of the cards in this strategy are sent to the graveyard from the deck, they're able to summon themselves back out, and for that reason it reminds me a lot of a deck like Lightsworn. It's not as aggressive as a deck like Tearlament was, but Lightsworn is a very fair comparison because they're constantly summoning out bodies and they're really trying to just flood the field and overwhelm the opponent with the powerful monsters they create. If you want to play a more aggressive style deck that does revolve a bit around variance, then this is going to be a great option for you, because if your mills are hitting, you can easily flood the field and win the game in an instant. The namesake of the deck, Blistrix, is a phenomenal card. If it's milled, it can summon itself out to the field, which is obviously really strong because it's got a huge attack stat. On top of that, its effect is still really good. It can recycle back 3 ELESTRALs to your deck to be able to pop any card on the field. The deck also takes advantage of Morolith, an incredibly powerful ELESTRAL as part of the Lith family of cards. These 2-drop ELESTRALs all have really unique summoning conditions, and Morolith's condition to summon itself out is really good for this Blistrix strategy. Basically, if your opponent has fewer ELESTRALs in their underworld, it's a free normal cast, and on normal cast it can mill 5 cards, which is going to be making your strategy of milling cards that much more consistent. Blistrix is one of the most aggressive decks in ELESTRALS' history and definitely is one of the better ones the game has seen. However, I only have it at number 5 and I can't put it much higher than that right now, mostly because the deck revolves heavily on variance. If you're going to be milling, there's going to be some games where you're going to get very lucky and hit the cards you need to hit. But there's going to be others where you're going to struggle to hit the cards you want and it could cost you a game. Another downside for the Blistrix strategy is that you have to play a critical mass of ELESTRALs that actually do something for your strategy. For example, you have to play a good amount of ELESTRALs that mill cards to the underworld, you have to play ELESTRALs that summon themselves back, and just good utility guys as well. So you can't play that many runes, which are going to be your spell and trap cards to relate back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Typically, ELESTRALS decks play between like 18 and 22 runes, but Blistrix can really only afford to play 12. And that was before the last limited list that came out, where we saw Rise from the Ashes. One of the best cards in Blistrix was taken from 3 copies per deck down to 1. So definitely one of the bigger power plays for the strategy has been put in check. Here's what a competitive Blistrix deck would look like for you. It's a great strategy overall, has a ton of room for you to improve, and also is very new player friendly. So if you're interested, definitely consider picking it up. But moving on to our number 4 best ELESTRALS deck, we have Nixamera. Now, Nixamera relies heavily on the frost element as well, but also takes advantage of solar and lunar elements too as part of their engine requirements. Nixamera is a really unique Elestral. Basically, it has two forms. It's a 2-drop Elestral, which means it requires 2 spirits to enchant it out, at least, and it has one that is a frost and solar and one that is a frost and lunar, to correspond with its risen and fallen forms. During your turn, it's in its risen form, which is an aggressive 7 attacker capable of destroying your opponent's set runes. And during your opponent's turn, it transforms into its fallen form, a fearsome 7 defender that can't be targeted by invoked runes. The two forms, risen and fallen, kind of flip-flop between one another. And because on your turn it's going to be in its risen form and on your opponent's turn it's going to be in its fallen form, it's always going to have the better of the form for the given situation that you're going to be in. It's also really good because the transformation can happen from pretty much anywhere, from deck, from hand, from underworld. You only need to play 1 copy each, which is really good because it means you can play a lot more cards that are going to be more situationally good, a lot more runes that are available, but even supplement your deck with the Like a Void package, which we talked about at the beginning of the video. Here's what a Nixamera deck would look like if you include the Like a Void package into your strategy. Now, what Yu-Gi-Oh deck is Nixamera like? Well, I had a really hard time finding a good comparison because the deck is super unique, but the closest thing I could say is going to be like an old school Chaos list, because the deck plays a lot of really powerful bombs that when they hit the field, the game can just end, like the Like a Void and the 2 forms of Nixamera. But they also support it with really amazing back row cards and runes, like in Elestrals like Gorgon's Gaze, Poison Tip Arrow, Tsunami, and so on. But Nixamera has nothing compared to my number 3 best Elestrals deck, which is going to be Bears. Now, Bears is a subclass of card. It's actually the most supported subclass in the entire game of Elestrals, dating back to its first set in the game. And the cards have gotten a lot better over time. But with the new Majursa Champion of Hestia, this deck has become absolutely incredible. Board wipes in Elestrals are very difficult to find. For example, they just got Hurricane, which is their version of Heavy Storm. But the new Majursa Champion of Hestia can pop anything when it's cast, including other Elestrals, which is very difficult to find. It depends on the number of bears that are on the field, but it can destroy pretty much everything and go for game very easily. They also have one of the most insane invoked runes in the entire game, being Hibernation. This card is honestly incredible. It's a 1-cost rune that lets you go +1 in spirit advantage and draws you a card. The best comparison I've heard for this card specifically is it's basically just Sky Striker Engage. They also have an incredible and searchable counter rune in Don't Poke the Bear, which lets them win pretty much any battle. The deck you're seeing on screen is what I expect bears to look like going forward, but if you like decks that have a very heavy focus on the battle phase, then you're going to love this strategy. And because this deck does have that high focus on the battle phase, it can snowball very quickly and make a lot of really huge power plays. And because of that, I would say that Bears is actually quite similar to a strategy like Gladiator Beasts, where Majursa is just their version of Geyserus. Bears has a ton of potential, and I think a lot of players are going to be surprised to see it this high on my list. But my number 2 best deck is one that should be no surprise to anyone, and it's going to be the brand new Champion of Zeus strategy, or just pure Thunder if that's what you want to call it. The deck revolves around the brand new Champion of Zeus cards and the big bad boy Zeus himself, which is the best divine rune in the entire game. On top of that, Thunder has some of the best toolbox cards in Elestrals as a whole. It's got Astrabbit, it's got Jolton, there's Quackle for recovery as well, and so much more. The first of which is Champion of Zeus of Valkyries, and the second is Champion of Zeus Titanostrike. These 2 cards are incredibly powerful. They're big bodies, but they also represent ways to just destroy your opposing back row. Let's take a look at a Champion of Zeus deck list. The strategy has so much removal, and all of its Elestrals can get really big too. And the spirit math on this deck is also very straightforward when you compare it to other strategies. The deck usually has an in-engine out to pretty much any situation and doesn't really have to worry about playing too many different spirits. Oh, and they also have Champion of Zeus Voltempest, which is just basically Gores. The deck is incredibly powerful, and you definitely shouldn't sleep on this strategy. Now, because of how good all the individual Thunder cards are, I would actually consider this deck to be very similar to a strategy like Blackwings, because number 1, if you don't answer their first creature, then you can snowball very quickly. And second, every single individual card in this strategy, just like Blackwings, is a way to just deal with a huge threat your opponent might have. And that's why, in my opinion, it's the second best deck in all of Elestrals. Now, before I get to my number 1 best Elestrals deck, I have 2 quick shoutouts. The first of which is going to go to Heal Control. Now, Heal is a great deck in Elestrals. There are a ton of really great tools to be able to heal your spirits in this deck, but they also get a lot of really cool tools to pressure the opponent, like the new Galaxy and Leica Void. And I also want to shout out Lunar Aggro, which is one of the best decks in the previous format. It won't be as strong as it was last format, but the best engine from Firestorm is Leica Void, and it fits right into the strategy. And finally, here we are at my #1 best ELESTRALS deck post Divine Champions Firestorm, and if you haven't guessed it already, it is going to be the namesake of the set, being Fire Artifact. Now, Fire is a really interesting strategy because it's been kind of on the back burner for pretty much the entirety of ELESTRAL's history, but the deck has gone so much stronger with the brand new support coming out of Firestorm. There are so many amazing Fire support cards in this set, but the biggest reason why I have it at the #1 best deck post Firestorm is going to be because of what actually happened in the previous format. If you guys remember, there was the Dallas Open that happened about 2 months or so ago, and that was the first time we had an in-person premier ELESTRALS event. And one of the most important standouts from that event was going to be how good Argo was. And Argo basically gets you any artifact rune from your deck onto an Elestral on the field, which is really powerful because a lot of these artifacts are incredibly strong. Basically, Fire takes that mechanic and actually makes it so much stronger, because one of the biggest weaknesses for that strategy was going to be the cost of all these artifact runes. But with the Fire cards, you can now enchant spirits from your underworld onto these artifacts to your side of the field, so you're recycling your resources and using your spirits twice. And because of that, the spirit management in this deck is actually incredible. Looking at the deck list that I have on screen, I'm only playing 2 copies of Ambrosia because we also have 2 copies of Reforged, for example, and all these other incredible cards that allow you to recycle your spirits. And it's not only good at spirit management, but it's also really good at recycling its resources from Underworld to hand as well. It can recycle back its artifacts that have already been used thanks to the Reforged that I already mentioned, but also with the new Remical as well. The deck has a ton of unique tools to get out of pretty much any situation, and it's gonna sound weird, but I would relate this deck back to a strategy like Noble Knights when it comes to Yu-Gi-Oh! And Noble Knights was never really that good, but I think Fire Artifact is poised to be the best deck in ELESTRALS post Divine Champions Firestorm. And there you have it, that's my list for the top 5 best decks in ELESTRALS post Divine Champions Firestorm. I think the meta is going to shape up to be really diverse, and there's going to be tons of other strategies that you could potentially see in a topping list. Now, if you want to play ELESTRALS, then make sure to go down in the description, check out their YouTube channel, as well as the Discord server as well. There's ELESTRALS Clash, which is their online client, and also, of course, check out ELESTRALS website too to be able to order some product and play the game for yourself. If you enjoyed the video, let me know by leaving a like on the video and commenting down below what decks you think are going to be really good in the Firestorm meta. Thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you all next time.